This is a vintage Rhodes. I've been restoring this thing as kind of a passion project for a few years. I started out not knowing at all what I was doing. It could still be contested. I am no expert in this field, but I love doing it. I've changed the tines, I've changed the rubber gaskets because it affects the sustain of the instrument itself. You have to make sure that they're aligned on the pickups because one, who thought it would be a good idea to put like 70 pickups inside of a box and call it an instrument? Either way, it sounds dope. All that said, this video is not about this Rhodes. This video is going to be about opening commercial studio property. How in the world are these two things related? Let's get started. So there are 73 keys on this, and there's a lot of parts involved in every key. I got this thing for a steal at a local music shop around where I'm at, and it worked, but it didn't sound great. And I just knew there was something special about the instrument itself, because pianos are definitely one thing. I feel like piano sounds can change, but something like a Rhodes, I've never found software that quite does it right. So I've slowly changed out every part on this thing. I baby this thing, and when it makes it on a track, it's like I'm proud. It's like, because there is something really special about this instrument. To me, there's nothing inherently special about any Rhodes, but it's cool. But this is a big part of having a studio. Now, you could have a Rhodes at your own home studio, but there's a lot more involved than just this at a commercial property. So we're going to talk about some of the things that are easily forgotten, some of the responsibilities you have to take on if you're looking at commercial property. So first off, I would say, do you even need it? Do you even need a space that large? Is there something that you can't do at home that you need a commercial space for? Is it just the fact that you can't record drums? Do you have access to another space that you could record drums at? Is there any way around you getting a commercial property? Because then past that, if you decide, okay, yes, I do need a commercial property, I need to expand, I have the business for it, I want to separate the business from my house, good. That's a good reason. That's kind of where I landed. Now you need to look at your own scope and where you're at. What is the cost of not only just living, but what's the cost of owning a business in a place like this? There's different fees, there's different things involved. There's always a hurdle somewhere. Some places are more conducive to owning businesses than others. Some local governments will help support small businesses in different ways, and it's important to look into those factors too. But the first thing you're inevitably going to come up against when you're talking about a commercial property, should you rent or should you buy? There is no one blanket statement that I can give to have that make sense for everyone. You have to take a look at a lot under the hood. What are your personal finances like? Do you have access to credit? Do you have access to family who can help you out in something like this, where having an asset of this size really makes sense? I was always scared to rent because there's so much that is specifically catered to a studio that has to happen, and you don't know for a fact if that rent's gonna change or not. You don't know if you can make certain changes to a building, at least around where I'm at. I know some people have been renting studios for years. They have really good agreements with their landlords, and that relationship is really, really solid, and that makes a whole lot of sense for them to rent, and that is awesome. For me, it made more sense to buy the building for a lot of other extenuating circumstances that are involved that we won't get into for the purposes of this video, but life happens, unexpected things happen, and you have to make pretty quick decisions. That said, I think the decision to do what we did with this building was a good one. This space is not rented. This is owned, and this will be an asset to me when I'm done. Even aside from all of that, there's other responsibilities that come along with owning a property, and even sometimes renting a property, depending on the agreement that you get into. There's a whole new level of upkeep involved in a studio. Equipment breaks down, you have to fix it. For me, I just got back from vacation to find out that my entire HVAC needed replaced, and that's a hefty chunk of change that I really didn't expect to make. Things like that, water heaters, plumbing. I had a leak here. I had to fix it. I don't have a landlord to do that. A few years ago, my water heater broke and I had to put in a new water heater, run the new lines, do all that stuff. Stuff that's not music related at all, but more property related. And there's definitely a balance there. So are you prepared for those unexpected expenses and those unexpected things that you just have to take care of? One big factor here, if you own commercial property, property taxes. I don't know if people outside the US have to deal with this. I would assume it's just called something different. But for me, property taxes are my main expense for my business. It's kind of astonishing how much property taxes cost. But I'm happy to pay that cost. I'm happy to pay my fair share of taxes to do business here, to know that my kids can go to a school that's well funded, to know that the roads are taken care of. Does it always happen that way? No, but ideally that's what happens. You have to account for other people using your space. Are you comfortable with that? Now you're not only designing a system and designing a space for you to work in it, to where you know the quirks of it, you know how to get around it, but you have to make sure anybody else who comes into your space could also easily figure out how your studio works. Does your patch bay make sense? Does your software all work together really, really well? Is there certain things you have to do to the computer to get it to work? How quickly could somebody come in who knows the general space? How quickly could they come in, get set up, get tones, and get rolling? Because after all, this is a business and it has to make sense for the people purchasing time. And that's not always going to be you if you're using the space to its fullest extent. I love working here. I love recording bands, but I would be missing out on huge opportunities if I didn't have other engineers here working. The other side of this is maintenance. There's a whole lot more equipment involved with an actual large property because with larger spaces comes larger things that are happening. So you generally need more equipment. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent not working on music, but fixing gear, fixing microphones, fixing preamps, rewiring cables, doing a whole lot of soldering, and fixing a Rhodes. Now, I love to do stuff like this. I love to tinker. I love to solder. I love to build and rework on preamps. I love to tweak circuits. That's a blast to me. I love to tune drums. I love to set up for sessions. That's just fun to me. Right alongside mixing, mastering, the actual process of recording, I love those other tasks. They're just fun. Is that something you get joy out of? Because it's not always going to be sit behind the desk and record. Whereas if you were working out of your house most of the time and you need to do a large session and you go and book a studio, somebody else is doing all that work. So way out. Yeah, does it seem glamorous to have an actual studio? Or can you get most of the work done by yourself and farm out those other things that don't bring you joy, that don't make you passionate about the process that you're about to do? Because there's a whole lot more involved with recording than actual recording. Especially when you're talking about owning and operating a studio that's not at your house. Now, I will say, I don't want to cast darkness on this whole thing. I have had studios in my house. That's where I started. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, this works. This absolutely works. My location, which doesn't seem anything like a music hub, but that also means cost of living and expenses in general are fairly low. I perceive my property taxes to be awfully high, and that could be true, but I imagine there's a lot of other places out there that pay a whole lot more than what I do. So all of this is what makes sense for you. What type of work are you doing, and where can you do that work? Can you get it done at home? Can you get it done in a makeshift space around your house? Do you have an extra garage or an extra room that you can make this happen? Do you need to separate your clients from your home? Do you have a family? Is that important? I love the sound of Rhodes. I love the sound of Rhodes, but it's pain. That sounds pretty good. All in all, I think owning a commercial property is kind of like owning an old instrument that really shouldn't work. Somebody decided to take 73 pickups, put them in a box, and call it an instrument. There's weird sharp pieces of metal sticking out everywhere. There's weird tines that don't stay where they're supposed to. These screws need adjusted every once in a while because they start floating and then they start buzzing right next to each other. It'll slip in and out of tune. It's a pain. It takes a lot to make this thing work, as expected, every time. But when it does, when it works, it's really special. When it works, there's really nothing that sounds like it, especially when you get a player who knows how to use it. Getting a player to sit down at this after I've worked on it and just hear them rip on this thing. It's hard to explain what that feeling's like. And it's hard to explain when you really get a band in a space like this that you've worked on. You've tried to make sound really, really good. You've maintained all the gear to the best of your ability. The mics are sounding on point. The instruments are sounding on point. The space itself just works. And besides that, the vibe is right. It's an environment that's really conducive to being creative. It's an environment that you created that allows people to create. And when you get to see that happen, it's pretty darn cool. It's kind of awe-inspiring when it happens. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you go home just like anybody else from any other job, but it's rare. Most of the time, you get to experience magic in a space that you created. You get to experience that transcendent feeling that only music can really create in someone, especially during the process of creation. And having such a direct hand in that feeling is hard to replicate anywhere else. I got it when I used to tour with a choir and sing with some of the best voices that I've ever heard in my life, and probably some of the best voices that I will ever sing with in my entire life. I get that feeling on stage when I play shows that are really moving, and I get that feeling here when I get to witness creation in the moment in a space that, with the help of a lot of other individuals that I created. It is something special. I don't want to scare you away from having a space like this. Just take into account the things that are easy to forget, the other expenses, the other things that will kind of steal your time from the music itself. Now, that's not to say that stuff's not worth it. I love doing that stuff. I love doing that stuff. But all things aside, I think we can all agree that Rhodes are awesome. I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. I'll see you in the next one. It's really hard to line up all these tines. Too much tines on my hands. I was trying to come up with a joke about how to be romantic with a Rhodes, but I couldn't come up with the right pickup line. That's a bad one. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. The pots on these things are almost always inevitably dirty, and you gotta use that spray cleaner on there. Had to change all these washers on here. Washer, hardly know her. That's bad.